All right, in this episode, we're going to talk about compliance certifications, and we're going to kind of focus on food safety because that's what I know the most about, and I want to keep it relative, but there's also compliance, medical, aerospace, automotive. I'm sure there's tons more, but those are going to be probably the big four.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that I can think of off the top of my head. It would be.
Toys, I mean, I would think you'd have to be pretty careful with toys.
Yeah, you got to be careful with toys, especially like choking hazards. I just went through this, doing some research on choking hazards for children. That's a big deal.
If you're selling to adult toy stores, you may pay extra for choking hazards. Isn't that right?
To each their own.
Better to give than to receive. I want to start with the term that I've seen over and over again in relationship to food safety. CFR Title 21 is the section of the U.S. Code for Federal Regulations that governs food, drugs, medical devices, and cosmetics. For injection molding and material selection, it is commonly referenced for food contact plastics.
Mm-hmm. I immediately go to my supplier and just tell them, hey, this needs to be food contact.
And then as you're helping your clients decide material, they'll help you decide that final selection.
Yeah.
And provide the certifications.
Yeah. So when it comes to certifications, I'm probably the worst at just knowing off the top of my head, but that's where my network comes in handy. And most of the time it's going to be related specifically to the material that's being used, right? There are times where you need like a clean room and need a certification at the facility that you're producing at. I'd say 75% plus, it's going to be what's being produced, what material's being produced. So I would just go to my supplier and say, hey, can you get these certs on this material? And they'll give me a group of materials that I could use.
Yeah, and of course, anything government related, there's tons and tons of information, but the one I kind of focused in on is it specifies limits based on temperature, contact duration, food types such as aquatic foods, acidic, fatty, or alcoholic foods, all of which could have a tendency to, I'm very carefully going to say, degrade the plastic a little bit, and that's probably not the right word.
Well, when you talk about leaching, which we hate that word too, but that is something that, so when your plastic's subjected to something super acidic or, well, I've done tests on straws, right? Where we used an alternative material. It was cheaper. It's an FDA-approved material, but there's different levels of FDA, and I can't remember the specific test that we had to do on this one. We were just told FDA.
And when you say you needed a test, you're not doing this test. You're sending that off to a lab.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not in the back with a kit.
No, this was for a big box store. They provided the test. They did all the tests. My customer paid for it, but they did all the tests. It needs to be a third party.
And they want to use their third party.
Yeah, you're not telling them where they're going. So so it was a straw, and so we were just told it needs to be FDA approved. It was an FDA approved material. Well, come to find out that the test that they did was literally drop it in alcohol and see how much petro base was pulled out of it. Gasoline. It was a like material, so it was gasoline that they were basically pulling through that straw to see how much petrochemical was pulled out of that base material. And this was for a kid's straw. So my whole thing was...
People are feeding kids some wild stuff.
I know, that's what I was saying. I was like, man,
stay away from that Fireball.
If you're drinking gasoline, you got bigger problems than what's coming out of that plastic, right? Point is, do your research, figure out exactly, because it was a massive increase in price going from what we were using to what actually, there's only one material that can pass that test out there right now that I know of. And it's not cheap, as you can imagine. So when we talk alternatives, make sure there's not any crazy tests that you're going to have to pass before moving forward with it.
The other thing this could address is processing aids, colorants, recycled content, and antimicrobial additives also much individually comply.
Yeah, so anything that goes into that base material, so if you're coloring that material, all the color needs to be approved. I mean, we've heard the lead-based, you remember the lead-based paint thing coming out
It's
of,
delicious, yeah.
yeah, coming out overseas. I mean, that was a massive deal, early, mid-2000s.
I'm sorry, folks. I was born in '77, so I'm a little rough around the edges. So, but this all ties also into what we're going to cover in later episodes about every single thing has a cost.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're using additives, recycled content, like some of this stuff, and you're still trying to get FDA approved, each one of those requiring an extra test is extra time, which is extra money, which is an extra cost to even get the test run.
Normally what will happen is you'll produce the part out of whatever material you're going to use, and they'll test that product in and of itself. Does that make sense?
We still have to have individual certifications somewhere in the paperwork.
That'll be on the supplier side.
Right.
But yes, yeah. So, but normally, like if you're talking like an NSF certification, which is very related to food service, they're going to take that part as it's produced and do all the tests necessary.
Let's talk a little bit about traceability. Like at what point, other than the initial certification at a big box store or a major buyer at like in your case, an airline, you would still have to keep this stuff on file.
Mm-hmm.
How often are people coming back to you as the manufacturer, not you, Calvin, but to me as the supplier, and I could tell you our own, but hey, I would like to see the certification of what I'm buying.
Yeah. From my customer standpoint, I mean, it's always, they're going to be asking about that on the front end.
Is this PO to PO?
No, no, but we have the ability to trace that. So we usually hold lot certifications for 2 to 3 years.
And for us selling direct to consumer, we may get 3 a month, we may get 1 a year. It just depends on, honestly, what headlines came out in the last 6 months and when people read about whatever they read about.
Yeah, I usually get a phone call from you once every 6 months. How do I answer this?
And a lot of times somebody will...
Or what does this mean? It's more of like, hey...
it's never that. They just assume that we have poison in our stuff.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, and it's hard for... We service the farming industry, who is all trying to do good ecologically, and we're selling a tray that outlasts everything else on the market by 100-fold. We're trying to reduce plastics by making not single-use items.
Right.
It's very important to us. But it is a plastic tray at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because if we made a metal one, it would be even more expensive. And we'd be out of business.
Yeah.
So to that end, when somebody reads a headline, and sometimes some of our clients on the fringe side of the bell curve could be way, like if they read it in a headline, it's the gospel, it's the truth. You must be putting whatever the current buzzword is into your plastics. Prove that you're not.
Yeah.
Here's the certification. That's all I can tell you.
What's the term if in court if you win the court case but still have a public look guilty from the public standpoint?
It's a public relations nightmare.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes people on that fringe, they will be appeased that you had the certification, and at least that you had an answer, and a correct answer. Like, hey, and we do try to stay up on these headlines that are coming out to get a little ahead of it, give customer service. And look, this is now getting into running the business side of things. It's things you may want to consider, especially if you're selling to new moms or pets or whatever the case may be, high sensitive areas where plastic is coming in contact with food or body parts.
Well, and let's talk about like a true catastrophic failure that's out in the field where you do get 6 calls all about the same thing where your product failed. And everybody's seen those date codes, right? You see the date codes on the back of plastics, and those are there for a reason. And when we talk about lot certification and traceability, that comes in, like, that's a big deal. Normally that's used for the manufacturer that's producing the parts if something's out of spec. But if it gets out into the field and they say, hey, this stuff's just, our parts are just cracking within 2 months of use, can you check on your lot and on your lot specs and make sure that everything was good? And, that's why we have those and keep those, to make sure that we can go back and say, hey, something was off here. We can go to the supplier, say what happened.
Which to me is is an example of you guys are always trying to do the right thing. You are trying to get yourself out of hot water if there's a problem, but if not, you do see non-mandated recalls where it's like me as a company, if something, God forbid, ever went wrong, we'd be like, hey, if you bought trays between this date and this date, we're going to do. We've never had to do it, thank God, but you do see recalls all the time. You can go to any big box store right now. There's typically a bulletin board. You look, there's half a dozen recalls going on at any one time.
Look at your vehicle. I mean, how many times do you get that phone call?
About the extended warranty or the recall?
No, the recall. I just bought my wife a car last year, and we've had 6. And so, I mean, it happens all the time.
So let's hit medical just real quick. That typically it's more of a specialized molder or a molder that's used to those type of requirements and certifications, and they're more apt to be able to help you produce something like that.
Yeah, because I'll look at components. My father-in-law is a surgeon, and he'll show me some of the components that they use for, maybe an implant or something of that nature. And I always ask whenever I see a plastic part if I know somebody's buying it, what do you buy that for? And he'll tell me. I'm like, holy crap, it's 20 cents of plastic, and they're selling it for $1,000. And I'm like, I never really understood it until like diving into something called PMA, which is pre-market approval. And that can cost, when you're talking implants, anywhere between $50 and $150 million.
So it's not the part that you're actually paying for, it's for all that front end.
All the process. Yeah. It's 100% process that you're paying for. Just something to be aware of. Obviously, that's a crazy example. I don't know every cost associated with every certification out there either. So do some research before you start going down the road of production.
All right, so again, we're trying to keep things very basic here. If you do have compliance issues, that's something that your sales rep or Calvin's going to be able to help you with. We will see you in the next episode. If you have any questions, please take a look at our website, usamademanufacturing.com.